Welcome everyone to this Transformations Community panel on just transformations, and really looking forward to this. We've got a great cast and we're going to hear a lot of different perspectives. We've got three fabulous presentations, and we're going to then move into breakouts and come back to a final closing panel. My name is Nick Graham. I'm with the Transformations community, and I'm a community builder and a weaver. And yeah, I think let's move swiftly on. Hang on one sec. Am I able to? Yeah. There's our agenda, which I just spoke to. Some housekeeping, which I've found to be quite useful, is the translations function on Zoom. And also we do welcome those videos, and we hope that you enjoy the session, and you'll get more out of it the more you put in. So please do go to the Hoover chat, even if you're a speaker as well. There's no Zoom chat, but go to the Hoover chat, and great if you can start typing away now. But let's start actually with a warm-up. Yeah, just introduce yourself in chat. Whereabouts you're calling from? Is there a burning question that you would like to ask? And keep using that chat through the session. And then in the second half, we'll have a bit more open space. We'd love for you to share links, share invitations, share research, share questions in there. And by the way, the platform will be open for at least a month, maybe two afterwards, so you can use that as a reference. So a bit more context. So that the Transformations community has been around for about 10 years, and it's a lot of thought leaders and action researchers like you. And we've synthesized a number of threads that in this transformative work. And of course, just transformations is at the core of this, because transformations, great, but are they for the benefit of all? Are there downsides to this? Yeah, what's the role of governance, and how can we decolonize our thinking? And what are our blind spots? And how do we dance with tension? I'm a Brit and shy away from tension, and maybe shy away from dancing, but yeah, learning to sit with that and be together. So with that, hopefully there's a few of you on the chat already. I'm just trying to navigate towards it. Yeah, I think we've got some people using their keyboards over there, so keep going with that. And yeah, I want to move swiftly on to our first presenter. So we'll introduce, Florence, if you could introduce yourself and let us know what you've been working on.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm Florence Reed, and I'm the founder and director of strategic growth at Sustainable Harvest International. I'm in Maine in the United States on unceded indigenous Wabanaki land, and zooming in from my home office, and I have a short presentation here. I was supposed to have two colleagues from Central America with that, so they've sent some short videos, one of which is in Spanish, and I tried to put English captions but failed, so I'll try to translate that, or if people have captions set on English, maybe that will pick it up. So let me jump in.
And whilst you're doing that, Florence, we do have our fourth presenter. Isabel has joined us, just FYI, so we can do 5 minutes per presentation. Yeah.
Okay, I will do my best. So Sustainable Harvest International, our mission is very focused on just transformations. It's working together to speak to the fact that everything we do is done collaboratively to create a just and sustainable world through transformative farmer training that nourishes communities and the earth. And our collaboration starts at the level of board and headquarters staff and country staff in each country all working together, whether it's getting together to do some of the work on the farms or doing our strategic planning collaboratively, and making sure that all the voices from board staff to the farmers that participate in the program are all part of the process. And our primary focus is on partnering with smallholder farmers. One example is the family of Santos Lorena Hernandez here. They partnered with us for 4 years to transform their farm in a way that would benefit their family and also benefit the environment. And the collaboration started right at the beginning with planning what they wanted for themselves would fit within our mission, which is environmentally focused, so that over time they were able to transform the degraded land that they had inherited to restored land that was producing everything that they needed to feed themselves, plus income to meet some of their other goals, such as having money to buy a new house. And because we worked very closely with them, with local trainers visiting every week or two for 4 years, the impact was long lasting. We find going back that 5, 10, 15 years after partnering with the smallholder families, 91% of them are still using the agroecology practices that they learned in the program and seeing the benefits in terms of food security and income, and the environmental benefits in terms of biodiversity, carbon capture, and so on. And the families, as I say, see the benefits for themselves, such as their goals in this case was to be able to build a new house for themselves. And Maria, the farmer that owns this land, speaks very briefly about that.
Good morning. My name is Maria Purificación Hernandez, and I feel very content because Sustainable Harvest has brought joy to me, a home for my children, for my house. They've also taught us many good things that we didn't know before, to work with a garden, with everything organic like charcoal, ash, with plants. I tell my husband, I tell him that I hope God wants to give me the strength to earn more money, to be able to buy all of that, so I can plant things like orange trees, mango trees, papaya trees, and other natural trees, so the little animals can eat and enjoy themselves. Because I'd like to see lots of little animals, chachaladas, toucans, doves. I feel happy because all kinds of birds come that we had never seen. Monkeys. You see monkeys pass by at night. One they call puhuna, or night monkey. And I feel, well, I tell myself I want to plant it all so that there will be food for the animals and for us.
So that's one of the farmers in the program of over 3,200 who have been through this program now. And as I say, the partnerships with the farmers are the key, but we also look to partner with other organizations. And my colleagues who are responsible for partnerships in Panama and in Belize, these very short videos discussing that. 1 minute, okay. I hate to leave out my Central American colleagues, but well, yeah, maybe we should. Yeah, no, we won't have time for that. Okay. So as I say, where we've worked with over 3,200 farms that did over 4 million trees, improved their income and their diet. We're now focused on the 500 million smallholders around the world and how we can help them with similar just and sustainable transformations. To that end, we have a scaling initiative to reach 1 million farms by 2030, which would restore 8 million acres and achieve food security for 5 million people. And the key piece of this scaling initiative is partnerships. And I'm happy to talk more about that with anyone who is interested. And okay, I guess that's it.
Well, I'm so sorry to cut that short because there's a lot that we can get into. Yeah, there's partnerships that I can connect you to. I think 43,000 farmers in Egypt that are making more money now through regenerative farming and carbon credits, and similar projects in Sri Lanka and India with about 1 million farmers. So yeah, there's definitely good. I'm sure there's lots more in this room as well, those kinds of partnerships. So please do put those asks in the chat, and then this is a fertile ground. Moving on to our next presenter, Hedda.
Hey, I will also share screen. 1 second. Let me know if you can.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's even better. And that's perfect.
Can you see my notes or?
No, that's fine.
Okay. So yeah, I'm Hedda. I'm a master's student at the Stockholm Resilience Center situated at Stockholm University, and I'm presenting what I did the last year for my master thesis, dealing with the question of questioning the role of deliberative mini-publics in just and sustainable transformations. So yeah, why is it relevant? Because just as the speakers this morning pointed out, there's no question of the need of transformations. The question is more remains, how can we make this transformation more just, and what should actually be transformed, and transformed towards what? So my research ties more into with the question, who decides when and how transformation takes place? And here deliberative mini-publics, also known as citizen assemblies, come in because they can provide a space where citizens can deliberate about what should change and how. And for those not familiar with citizen assemblies, they are a randomly selected representative sample of a population. They have access to quality information from, for example, researchers, stakeholders. The processes are facilitated and it's connected to policy making. And yeah, one example is, for example, the Climate Citizen Assembly that was initiated by Macron, that some of you may know, just for you to get that understanding. So I try to understand or find out what the role of DMPs is in just sustainability transformation. And I looked at 2 scholarships, deliberative democracy and transformations, to see how these 2 scholarly fields view the role of deliberative mini-publics. And my key findings were that, and this is just, I had many findings, I just focus on the one that I found the most interesting, is first the concept of plurality. So both scholarships pointed out that the plurality of perspectives in deliberative mini-publics can help to bring diverse norms and values to the surface and contest them. So the role of DMPs is to offer a space in which participants can express and negotiate their visions for the future, for example, or imagine plural pathways. And one interviewee shared one quote that I really liked. It's, "I don't think that transformation is likely to be a success if we can't deliberate with people who don't think like us. I think the true challenge is connecting with people who have different perspectives and care about different things." And that's, for example, one thing that deliberative mini-publics could provide the opportunity for. Then another one is the quality that they can have or be an open process. So that's also important for them to be actually inclusive and provide a space that represents the plurality of perspectives of all those participants coming together. And that just means that there's no fixed end goal to the process. So participants can go into the deliberative process as open-minded as possible, to also ensure integrity. Yeah. And the third one is that it can also support different capacities, such as it can provide a space that can enhance agency, deep listening, promote reflexivity among the participants, or sense making and mindfulness. Also, one thing that was talked about this morning, that we need to connect to our feelings and emotions, and because it is a facilitated process, it can help those participants, but then again also only those who actually participate. And it's one critique, for example, that how can we scale up this process of deliberative mini publics? So that remains unanswered. So concluding, I see that there's a potential that DMPs can have in transformations. At the same time, like, I see how relevant they have become, which is why I think it is so important to understand their wider role in transformations. Also, for example, to understand the unintended consequences they might have, because they are connected to policy making, like partly big decision making processes. And yeah, when it comes to the collaboration between these two scholarships that I looked at, deliberative democracy and transformations, I also see that there are a lot of overlaps. So I definitely see that there is space where both scholarships talk about the same thing, or they have a similar interest. I also see that they could also enhance each other. So I think there's definitely room for collaboration. And that was also supported by the interviewees that I talked to, which also showed interest. But then also it's important to be aware of the stereotypes, because I, for example, saw that deliberative democracy scholars had a certain stereotype about what transformation means, or what a transformation scholar would work with. So yeah, that I found, for example, also very interesting, and that would need to be considered when those two should collaborate. So thank you for listening. And I also think that there's some interesting questions coming from that. I'm happy to talk about that also in the breakout room. I'm not sure how I am with time. So
perfect timing. Thank you so much. And we will definitely get into that question of how do we scale this up or out or in deeper. And so moving swiftly on to, well, Rita, I know you're ready for your session, and then Isabel after that.
Sure, happy to go first. Let me try to share my slides and make sure that it's actually working. Can you see full screen? Are we good?
Yeah.
Okay. So my name is Rita Golson, and I work at the Caima Center for Social Innovation at Haifa University. And what I want to spend the next 5 minutes chatting with you about is actually trying to understand the role of impact education in the transformation to the new world. And so what we've seen is that academic impact centers are booming. We're starting to see more and more centers that are trying to bridge the social and the environmental and the economic aspects of life, trying to kind of enhance impact economy. And what we've done actually is a research that try to look worldwide and try to understand what are some of the emerging trends and what are some of the shifts that we're seeing, and how this phenomenon can actually play a vital role into reshaping perhaps the entire education system, or if I'm being a little bit less dramatic, then maybe how can they impact the way the academy engages with the community and tries to make a real impact, and not just kind of remains a designated place where you only do your research but does not meet the reality and the needs of the communities. And so, this is what we did. We found 107 centers worldwide. And one of my own personal motivations was I want to look through the diversity lens, right? So it's not just about looking at Ivy League institutions like Harvard, Stanford, Oxford, or Cambridge. I mean, all of them are great and amazing, of course. But also looking at different universities also in Africa and in Latin America and in Asia, and so yeah, 5 continents, and we've been chatting to academic impact centers leaders, trying to understand how they operate, how they structure, how they organize their work, and what sort of meaning can it have for education, higher education in general. And I guess the very obvious answer is there's no one size fits all, right? So they don't look the same, although they're all academic impact centers. They have different emphasis, they have different missions, they have different theory of change. If they have a theory of change, but they all kind of put up a shape and operate in a different way. And what we've done is actually put those categories or those questions or some of the tensions that we've seen into 3 main themes. So one of them is steering, who are the people involved? The other one is structure, how do they operate, where are they located? And the last one, and this is where we're seeing most of the shifts, is actually the substance. So what is their focus? How do they see the world? How do they find their mission? And so if I want to look at steering, the first question that comes to mind is, where are the leadership? Who are the people involved, right? Are we talking just kind of regular, or not regular, but classical tenure track academics who've done research for their entire lives? Or are we talking some sort of transformative notion of pro-academics, people who have a foot both in the academic research, but also in practitioners? And that correlates with the target audience. Are we aiming for the elites, the A student, kind of A-type student only, or are some institutions are actually actively seeking out local change makers and trying to get them involved? And also, is the role of the academia, if we look at people, are we focused only on people on campus? So are those just our students? Or should we be looking more broadly, looking at the community, at the ecosystem at large, around our students and large our faculty? And so those are some of the questions we've noticed. And on structure, what the first, maybe it's worth mentioning that academic impact centers first emerged as part of business schools, right? So they were part of this notion that business schools should be part of the solution, not just part of the problem. But we've seen them migrate elsewhere, and they're now becoming a whole university kind of phenomenon, bringing new perspectives and interdisciplinary approach. And a lot of the funding sometimes allocates and emphasizes on your structure and what sort of work would you do, whether that's going to be something internal, very small, like I'm going to try running this brand, or something much bigger when we have the whole community and one of our alumni perhaps giving a healthy donations that can enable a wider work. And if I look at substance, the last question, as I mentioned, which was much more interesting to me, what we've seen is actually some sort of a shift from traditional research and teaching divide into seeing institutions who define their role as analyzing the system, understanding the problems. So it's not just necessarily on coming up with new entrepreneurship, not new solutions, like I'm gonna run a hackathon and maybe in 6 months I'm gonna have a product, but really diving deep and understanding what are the stakeholders and what are some of the phenomena and what are some of the power dynamics of complex social challenges, and then understanding that can in turn influence the way we perhaps re-evaluate or reimagine or recreate our reality and introduce more transformative purpose into the kind of work we do. And so what we've seen is a shift or move from market-oriented solutions towards creating a shared mission, which is shared by cross-cultural, of course, but also cross-sectoral. So the public sector and the social sector and the business sector and the academia all working together. And I don't know how much in terms of times, but my initial thinking right now is the academic impact centers are very interesting phenomena in terms of maybe showing us a new trend that is emerging of how education plays into our lives. And so the structural pyramid would be, you would go to undergrad school, right, which is very wide, and you kind of get an education. And then you specialize in as you go up the ladder. And you're supposed to have more of the answers, right? So by the time you're doing your PhD, you are like picking this very specific subject, and you're becoming the subject matter expert, and you should know the answers to the questions in that particular domain that you spend, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, even more years researching and studying.
Rita, can you wrap in the next 30, 60?
Yes,
yeah.
30 seconds.
Yeah.
Whereas in academic impact sector, what we're seeing is actually a move in the other direction. You start with a problem, and what you normally would see is just the tip of the iceberg, which is very, very narrow. And then you would have interdisciplinary and cultural aspect of academic impact centers trying to understand that. And then you would move into mapping the entire system. And essentially the shift that we're seeing here is you're starting to ask the questions. You don't have the answers, but rather you are stuck with the questions, which is kind of transforming the way academia could and should perhaps approach social challenges. So yeah, thank you very much. Happy to chat about that, of course, both in the chat and in the breakout sessions shortly.
Yes, please, definitely. Let's continue the conversation in the breakouts and plenary. And that's such a challenging thing if you've been through that solution-orientated system to get into living the questions. But again, that's something that we can do together. Our last presentation is Isabel. So Isabel, would you like to tell us a little bit about you and what you've been working on?
Absolutely. I'm sorry I was late. I'm joining from the hub in Prague, so it's been a little bit hectic to say the least, but I'm going to share my screen, which will assist me. Let me know if you can see this once I...
Hi, it's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. There's a little bit about me, but I would like to get through quite a lot today. So I'm going to leave that up while I kind of introduce the topic.
It's loading now. We can't see the slides.
Oh, it says my screen sharing is paused. Give me 1 second.
Yeah.
I might have to change.
That we can see.
New share. Here we go. What if I just share?
That one's fine.
Maybe if I do my whole, yeah. Okay. Let's see. Might have to leave it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Like this. Okay. Wonderful. So that is a little bit about myself, but the question that I'm going to start with today is, what do heritage and regeneration have in common? And this is on the topic of transformation through community partnership and culture-led development. These are just field notes in a foray in regenerative travel and the story of culture. So these two pillars of heritage and regeneration might be perceived as completely opposite ends of a spectrum. We have the past on one hand and we have the future on the other, but the truth is that there is a spiral to be had in which cultural assets have a real role to play in the development of opportunities for communities to prosper in the future while continually enriching culture and not at the sacrifice of it. So I am a cultural specialist and a communicator, and I'm delighted to be here to share with you 3 key ideas for socioeconomic development that place culture and community at their very center. So I'm going to start with a little case study that is the background of my research. So when I first began my master's thesis in archaeology at the University of Oxford, I noticed a discrepancy in the fact that many of the places we romanticize as historians and as travelers and storytellers are actually often facing a slew of socioeconomic issues beneath the surface. So in places like southern Italy and Greece, I noticed a contrast between the idyllic landscapes, rich history, and authentic kind of food and traditions, and the honest realities of marginalization, unemployment, organized crime, and more. But I also had this hunch that there was more to the story than this sort of negative, dark side to these places. And you wouldn't actually guess. So I use the region of Calabria as my case study because it's both where my family is from and where I situated my research. If you read the international news on Calabria as a region, you would find plenty of articles telling you it is the Wild West, mob-ridden, a complete wasteland, basically. However, now you're seeing, if you Google kind of Calabria tourism, there are so many glorifying articles about its idyllic landscapes and beaches and all of this. So it's this very polarizing view on a place that it's not really worth being like saved or helped, but as foreigners who appreciate beauty, you can hit certain hotspots and maybe use trusted brands within the travel industry to experience. And so I was really interested in finding a subversive narrative on the tourism experience that really situates culture at the heart and benefits local business. So I found a documentary deep in my Googling in my master's research about Calabria, produced by one of Italy's biggest media outlets, actually. And in the program, local businesses were speaking about how they were rooting into tradition to create offerings for tourism, so restaurants, stays, experiences that are kind of rooted in an authentic Southern Italian experience. And I also did a round of community surveys, which came back telling me that locals were indeed very interested in utilizing their they had to offer, and not maybe something that could be created like a luxury resort, for example. So the reason I give this anecdote is because it really well sums up some of the trends and approaches, good and bad, that I have that I went on to experience in my research and in culture sector partnerships where I've worked for the past 2 years. So the 3 takeaways are as follows. Number 1, so when the development program is imposed from above, it may seem like development is taking place to some degree, but it's often not local stakeholders who are actually reaping the benefits. So travel, as an example, the top-down approach to building tourism may appear to be successful in exposing a place to this multi-billion-dollar industry and creating new infrastructure to support it. But the reality is that when places become commodified as destinations, local culture is put at risk. And inauthentic cultural experiences often offered by third-party providers can become the majority, while over-tourism can price locals out of their own city or their own environment, and also, like, not to mention the entire environmental conversation around what that can do. So a top-down approach is often a big red flag, not just in travel, but in other industries such as tech, fashion, where organizations come together to profit off of a local culture, but locals see little of the benefits and are actually becoming laborers to what is more of a business plan than it is a development program. So that's the problem. But good news is that there is a solution. The ground is really fruitful for grassroots development to be initiated without flattening culture, without destroying the landscape. And that happens when governments and organizations really collaborate with the community. So one emerging approach to regenerative travel that you can watch is the construction of cultural networks, in which organizations work together with local businesses that act as travel and experience providers and develop a really authentic route or trail through a region that allows you to experience its land and its culture. And through these kinds of networks, we have, which have proven successful in rural Portugal and Cuba, local businesses are the first to prosper. More niche experiences priced higher are more likely to welcome a responsible number of tourists rather than the masses. And an authentic sense of culture and place can be preserved for generations to come, hence this approach's name as regenerative. Beyond travel, we can adopt the approach in other areas of development and social enterprise by surveying the landscape of existing tradition and aptitude first, and then deciding where we can help build local capacity to execute their own development program that places local business and local culture at the heart of it. And then number 3, this is important. Storytelling in collaboration with locals is absolutely necessary to amplify, promote, and actually fully execute regenerative development. So I often see a lot of, like I've been seeing here, a lot of conversation around what actually happens to execute the development program, but I'm really interested as a storyteller in how we can bake the promotional aspect into the development program, because for me, part of community transformation is for locals to be given the platform, the support, and the agency to retell and rewrite their own story, and also to reach their markets. And this is often far more compelling in result than what a marketing agency could create without local involvement at all. It's often way cheaper because you just need somebody to facilitate this process. And frankly, like if it weren't for these resources, we wouldn't know about the development. So the kind of philosophical question that I'll sort of leave you with is, you know, if if a woman's cooperative in rural China or a weaving community in the Amazon develop into a social enterprise that crafts beautiful products and has a lot of potential to grow kind of local wealth, but the products never meet the international market, is development work a success? So is development work a success if you rely on a dialogue with the rest of the world and no one ever knows about it? And so that is kind of the call to pay attention to the storytelling piece and also make the storytelling experience really transformative in and of itself. So I hope these observations have been helpful. It was a whistle-stop tour through a long piece of research, but I would love to continue the conversation. So if you're on your phone and you want to scan that, that will give you a thread on LinkedIn that I created with these 3 takeaways, and also a link to my master's thesis if you're interested in reading the more academic resources. But I would love your thoughts on just the thread in itself, and I would love to kind of hear your feedback and continue the conversation in that space so it can kind of become more accessible. So
Definitely. And on that note, thank you for posing those questions. We're going to head into breakouts now, and we've got about 15 minutes in breakouts to go deeper into those beautiful projects and questions. And if you can just reflect on what's coming up for you and perhaps what we could do together as we ask the question, how do we do this just transformation? So that's the invitation for the next 15 minutes, and I'll open the rooms now and see you back in 15 minutes. If there's any questions, just ask them in the chat and I'll post the instructions there or the question there. But you guys have fun and I'll see you soon. Thank you so much for those presentations. Welcome back. We've got a few more seconds for 25 seconds for the other groups to come back. And did you have a good chat in your breakouts, Florence? Yeah, great. And I'm still curious about the mysterious TO. I would love to meet TO and everyone else. Ah.
Oh, I was going to say she had some good perspectives to share in our breakout.
Great. Well, I look forward to hearing more about that. Welcome back, everyone. I know that you wanted to continue those conversations, and that's okay. And hopefully you can after the conference as well. So please do stay connected through the app. And yeah, we've got just about 5 minutes left. So yeah, any insights from those breakouts around, what's coming up in this conversation? What do we need and what can we do together? Yeah, any thoughts? What struck you? I would like to, it would be great to hear from a non-panelist. Maybe Stephanie, Teresa, if you're comfortable, Marisol, Tio, I hear great things. This is always the way. So maybe one of the panelists would like to give your kind of closing thoughts as we move towards the close.
No, I would just say, just maybe like a reflection from our session. It was really nice to hear more from Florence, just to learn more on what she's doing and how she's done it. So kind of like pointing out why the success has been possible. So one of the key points for me was around engaging local communities. So kind of like sourcing valuable skills from them and constantly trying to train them where the skills are not there already. So I think for me, that has been quite fascinating, because also like my research is about just transformation, so just tipping points. So it's always like really nice for me to understand how the tipping points happen and how they happen just here. So it was really nice to understand from Florence deeply really how this is kind of like happening and stuff like that. And I think TO also added a really key point about the role of procurement and how that can also, you know, contribute to development or stuff like that. So that was kind of fascinating for me. So thank you.
Yeah, and very intriguing tipping points and the how and procurement. Yeah, love to know more. And if you want to go a little bit deeper, then we can have another minute on that. Or
I don't know, Sarah, somebody else can go. I don't want to go, but if somebody else has a good points or stuff like that, you can just pick up.
Would anyone else like to share your closing thoughts? Hedda?
No, I think that, for example, Stephanie addressed some interesting question regarding like the citizen assemblies and regarding right-wing race in Europe. And if this could be like an opportunity to address those perspectives, or if it would be actually not disadvantaged, but like a challenge, because yeah, I think like the question she raised was also like which voices should we hear, and how, that I found very interesting that she rose that question. And I think like Isabella also talked about using storytelling also as I'm not sure if that's right, please correct me if I'm wrong, as a method to also create those transformative partnerships, which I also think is super, super interesting insight. Even, for example, in citizen assemblies, like using storytelling and like different methods to get across certain information and using like different methods. So yeah. Do you wanna jump in, Isabella? Did I miss anything?
No, that's great. I think it's basically that plus like from the community is what I would like to leave people with. I think community members who like want to be involved, that is.
Yeah, I believe in the power of the community. It has the key to most of our questions. And yeah, I wanted to make sure we have closing thoughts from Rita as well.
Yeah, I can go. So in our breakout session, discussion kind of detoured a little bit about the wide scope of transformation and how the discussion can be very, very wide in general, and sometimes you need to make you need to clarify what the boundaries are and what you're working on and what you're not working on, because otherwise it's becoming like almost too wide to barrel, so overarching like almost any field out there.
Yeah, definitely. Boundaries are beautiful. And whether that's personal boundaries or defining what you're actually working on. And I think closing thought for me, just riffing off what I was hearing from Hedda and Isabella, is hearing voices. I think this is crucial, and deep democracy is something that I'm very curious about. I don't know if you've had experience with deep democracy, but consent process and hearing all voices, but then the actual action in community. My question would be how do we ensure that those transformations are in service to life, not in service to the few? And I think that's really what brought us all here together. So thank you again for our panelists, and thank you for participating in the audience and the conversation. And we look forward to continuing the conversation on this thread. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Yeah, see you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you so much.